cookbook world is pretty incredible. And I thought I was kind of riding this juggernaut when I was invited, immediately after I was on the Today Show, I was invited to Australia, and I was asked to appear amongst some other shows that I was on a show called Late Night with Steve Vizard. Steve Vizard was the Australian equivalent of David Letterman. And this was quite an honor. And for me, it was a really big deal because I hadn't really been on very much television. I didn't have very much experience at all being on television. So I fly over to Australia, and I get to the studio, and they give me the total star treatment. I get a dressing room, has my name on the door, beautiful bottle of Australian Shiraz inside, and it's time to go out and go on stage. I'm very nervous. I have butterflies in my stomach. My heart is pumping, and they bring me out to the stage door, and the band strikes up the big number, and I get whisked out onto the stage, and there's this guy, Steve Vizard, who's this big man on campus in Australia, and we started doing a little chat, which is all great, because on late night television, it's really more about the kind of the laughs than it is about whatever you're doing, or whatever you're selling, or promoting, or whatever. So finally, Steve says, well, Bob, time for you to show us how to make this steak au poivre that we've been hearing all about. I'm not much of a chef myself, so I thought I would invite a couple of studio audience members to come down and help you out. And I go, okay, sure, whatever. And then we've got this setup. It's kind of like this, but because it's not a kitchen in the TV studio, they just have a card table with one of those burners, you know, a propane burner. And so he brings down a couple of studio audience members. I still remember, the woman's name was Jane, she has this big shaggy blonde hair, and she immediately starts seasoning my steak. And I think this is fantastic, because now I can focus on Steve, and I can continue trying to be funny. Which is not really my nature, but I was working really hard on it. And then he invites this other guy down, and the guy's name was Eddie, and this guy was like a wormy guy. He probably never cooked a meal in his life. And I'm thinking, why did they pick this guy? And so he comes down, and by this time, I've got my steak in the pan, and it's cooking, and Eddie keeps trying to put things in the pan. He keeps, you know, he wants to put the mustard from the mustard sauce in the pan. I go, not now, Eddie, not yet. And then he reaches for the cream. I go, Eddie, not yet, not yet. He's becoming my nemesis. Like he went from being a studio audience member to being like the guy I hated most in the whole wide world in about 2 minutes. So the steak cooks. It's just about time to put the cognac in the pan, and I pull out these fireman's outfits that I brought with me. It was like this big gag that I had set up, because I figured we need to protect ourselves. So I give Steve Vizard a fireman's outfit. I've got one on myself. And then and the audience, by the way, is loving this. So all of a sudden, I've turned the audience around. They're laughing at all these jokes. And it's time to put the cognac in the pan. As you know, the steak au poivre is a nice, beautiful piece of filet mignon, and you flambe it with cognac. So I pour the cognac in the pan, and I pour some extra cognac in the pan because I want to make it dramatic for the camera. And just as I go to tilt the pan to the flame, Eddie, the idiot, reaches for the green peppercorns. The sleeve of his sports coat catches on fire. And when I say catches on fire, I don't just mean like, you know, like a little bit of smoke. I mean erupts into a ball of flame. Eddie looks at the fire on his arm, freaks out, lunges forward, knocks the table just like this, knocks it over onto the floor. The floor looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. There's mustard splattered everywhere and broken glass. My book is lying in a pool of cognac. The steak is on the floor and it's on fire. As is Eddie, who's still running around the studio like this with his arm on fire. I'm looking at this, my heart is pounding. People are running for the exits. Those people who are not running for the exits are looking at me like I'm the Antichrist. I'm thinking to myself, my God, this culinary career of mine that just started a few months ago that I thought was on this like meteoric rise is going to be over like that. I mean, I'm probably going to get sued by Eddie. My publisher's going to renege on my deal, and they might not even let me out of the country. Anyways, finally, some stagehand comes out with a bucket of water, I don't know what it was, and he puts his hand into the bucket, and the fire goes out. And Steve Vizard, being the consummate professional that he is, says, okay, we're going to take a commercial break. So we take a commercial break, we come back. Mercifully, the show ends. I slink out the stage door like I'm a white-collar criminal. I go out like this. I go back to my hotel room, I turn off the lights, I'm lying on my bed, and I'm replaying everything in my mind. I'm beating myself up. I'm saying to myself, if only I'd had a little more television experience, I could have figured out how to solve this. I could have done something. There must have been a solution to this. I can't believe I've done this. And as I'm sitting there, just beating myself up, there's a knock on the door. And my first reaction is to dive under the bed. But then I think, what else could go wrong? I mean, it can't get any worse than this. So I go to the door and I look through the little peephole, and I can see a bellhop standing with a tray and what appears to be a bottle of scotch. Now this time I could really use a drink. So I open the door, I grab the bottle of scotch, and I slam the door shut. And I see on the bottle that there's a note. So I take the note off, I open it up, and it says, "Dear Bob, thanks for being such a good sport. Steve Vizard." And at that moment, and only that moment, I figured out that Eddie the Idiot was a stuntman, and I was the idiot. And I've been punked. Before punking even was invented, I was totally punked. And then to add insult to injury, at the end of the year when they did their very best of show, of course there I was. Anyways, that is a true story that I didn't tell for about 15 years because I was so humiliated. And now I think it's really funny.